Today we're having Peter Dicone from the DEP. He's a wildlife biologist, and he specializes in invasives and that sort of thing. He graduated from UConn, so he's a local person, and he's written books, and I hear he's very passionate about what he talks about. So this should be a really good presentation. So please welcome Peter, and he's got some literature if anybody can get it, and maybe he'll take it from here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. You folks as the Land Trust play an important role for wildlife, and what I'd like to share with you is my knowledge about some of the challenges we have here in Connecticut, especially when it comes to habitat. And what I'd like to do for you is I'm going to cover a little bit about, well, as it says, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This slide actually has all three, and I'm not going to tell you what they are now. You'll know it by the end of the talk. You probably can identify what's out there. The good is the big slide in the background. The bad is the plant on the left, and the ugly is the one on the right, and we'll talk about that as I go along with my slides. I just want to say that I'm volunteering my time tonight. With all our time budget crunches, I do so many talks during the year, so taxpayers can feel good about me coming here tonight. But we do have a lot of getting the word out to the right audiences like yourselves that are managing land. Who here is a habitat manager? Just I want to know before I start my talk. Anybody here is a habitat manager? All right, everyone in this room is a habitat manager, whether you mow your lawn, plant a flower. If you order somebody to do something on your house lot or work for a landscaping company or plant any type of planting in the soil in Connecticut, there's 3 million acres, you are a habitat manager. But we tend to disconnect ourselves from where we live and what the natural environment is. And that's something that is a challenge to get people to understand that we do manage land, even if it's a postage stamp lot. And then, of course, some folks manage larger acreages. But we're all habitat managers. We all manage some of that 3 million acres that's found in Connecticut. My handouts, just real briefly, any of the plants I talk about, I have common and scientific names. I tried to list them on sheet 1 and 2. Just so that their scientific name is universal. You could be in any country and you say that scientific name and you know the plant, whereas common names get us in trouble sometimes. The first sheet, Connecticut Invasive Plant List, this is only 96 or so plants that are only 2 sides of the paper, and these are the ones that are called the bad actors and the ones that are either invasive or potentially invasive. Okay? All right. Can we? Have technical difficulty?
Trying to get a little less light, so or a little more light, so I can see you with less light.
All light or no light?
That's it. Go half and half.
You can just turn the middle part on. I don't know. You know where it is?
Yeah, we really should have the front ones off so the slide, but anything else. It's a light. Okay, all right, I'm going to get started. Okay, the last time that Connecticut experienced a large denuding of the landscape and change drastically of our landscape was during the colonial period when we changed our land from forest to field. By 1810, it's estimated that we had about 75% field or pasture. A lot of herbaceous non-natives were introduced during that period when they were trying to create forage crops that came from Europe. But other than pre-glaciation, other than the glacial period, this was the only time, the next time in our era here in Connecticut that we changed so drastically our landscape. Of course, everyone knows that the forest grew back on that soil. The climate of Connecticut wants to grow trees. And we know today that it's about 59% forest. We know that UConn did a big study, and they did digitized aerial photos of our land here, and they know approximately how much of this and that we have, impervious surface and wetlands and evergreen versus deciduous and wetlands. And we know a lot about the quantity of what we have, and we are just starting to address the quality, because it's not the same forest that we had pre-Columbus, and it's not And we have lots of dynamic things happening as 3 million people are populating our state here. This is one of my favorite slides. This home that was a photo back in 1870, and the stone walls, occasional trees, the barns, and now you look at it 100 years later and it's all forested. Every town in Connecticut, whether you're in New Haven, Hartford, Pomfret, Hartland, experienced the reforestation. And the birds that fly through our backyards we take for granted today. If you go back to 1810, when there was only 12 deer left in the state and 75% of Connecticut was field, the last turkey died in 1813, there was not much habitat left. Now, the challenge for us here forward is the fragmentation of the land. 80% of this land is privately owned. We've enjoyed the comeback of this forest. And the challenge next is when we develop areas, is what we plant there going to affect the surrounding areas that are natural, or at least as natural as the comeback of the forest can make it. And that's the challenge for us. So far, that sheet, that 96 plants are the ones that have been identified as being bad plants or aggressive plants. Wildlife need 4 things, right? Food, water, shelter, cover, and space. Kind of basic. The arrangement of these 4 elements, the quantity and the quality of these 4 things, create the animal's environment. Now, we as humans require the same thing, except that we create our own food, water, shelter, and space. The animals depend on what we leave on the landscape and what we create. Everybody knows we can throw some food in the box and we get the birds coming in, and we enjoy the chipmunks and the squirrels fighting, and the tufted titmice and the chickadees fighting over a seed. You can put up 1,000 seeds in 1,000 bird feeders in your neighborhood, and if there's no habitat, nothing will ever come back to your feeders. Eating a sunflower seed is like eating a Snicker bar at the middle of the day when you're hungry. If you ate Snicker bar every time you felt hungry, you'd starve. Well, this is a supplemental food, and it's basically for our enjoyment. And most people think, though, that it's one of the answers to wildlife is just put some food out. As you become a habitat manager and you learn more, we know that there's natural sunflowers. There's 3 sunflowers. I put species, when we have the species. There's 3 of them out there. They're a little subtly different. But if you look at the seed, it looks just like a black rose sunflower seed with a great gold little patch. And if people thought about planting the seed rather than just filling a box in the backyard, you could get natural use. And I'll tell you, I found out how widely used these are by chickadees and tufted titmice one day. In the Roaring Wildlife area, I marked an area that I wanted to collect these little seeds so I can have a nursery grow them for me. And I was going to experiment with seeding them myself. And I had to beat the birds away. And I'll show you a little slide. I never expected that I was going to be there the day that they ripened. And I'm just going to show you a quick little snippet video I took of chickadees coming in. All right, now I'm an amateur photographer, but there's the chickadee. These are dried out woodland sunflowers, and literally you can see it picking away at that seed heads there. There was at least 3 or 4 of them, and I have a little side camera that I have that takes little video footages, and you can see it working away at that head. And if you pay attention when you're walking out there, you find this. It's a little tougher to identify in the fall because they lose their flowers, but the seed head is there, it's dry. Now, a lot of people will throw up a thistle feeder in their backyard to attract the goldfinches, but they never really ask, gee, what does a goldfinch actually eat in the wild? I mean, are there all these wild thistles out there? Is that all that they eat? And I hope that this video comes up for me. Technology can be challenging, but I just want to present you evidence of what I watch. Here they are eating seed heads. Now, everybody likes to chop down grass. They don't like to go to a seed head because we worry about ticks and all these other bad things. But if we don't let grass go to seed, there's not going to be many things like the seed eater. That's a patch of timothy. It's not native, but they do eat the native seeds as well. That's a patch of timothy, or that couple strands of grass. But male and female work in the seed heads of this timothy. This actually is on my own land. There's a little patch of meadow that I manage. Now, animals need cover. They need a place to hide from a predator. In the middle of the slide, I put a lunch pail. If I took all the needles off of that, now you can see my lunch pail. If that was a bird sitting there, it would get visible from a hawk flying over. If the ice were pelting, now it would be open to the ice pelts here. It would be protected. We as humans don't take... we take cover for granted. We don't understand it the way wildlife need it. They basically depend on what they find on the landscape. Here in the Hartland area, you're actually blessed with a lot of evergreen, but it's very important for cover. These vertical stems is another form of cover. If a bird were being chased by a hawk or it wanted to find a nest that's a little secure from being eaten, it could be secure in a thicket like that. The only time people think about creating thickets is when they want to barricade their yards from their neighbors and they want privacy hedging. They don't really think of it as a purposeful method of creating cover or thicket, but you'll find that these are actually in short supply in Connecticut, thicket environments. Only 5% of our forest is thicket, dense thicket habitat. Every animal needs a space, and I tried to boil it down to these birds are cousins. They're in the thrush family. The American robin's our state bird. It only needs about 3 to 5 acres to make a nest, raise their young. The wood thrush needs 30 to 50 acres of 9-inch or bigger trees clustered in a community of trees to make their habitat for breeding and nesting. The reason why I chose these two is that although they need different breeding habitats during migration, the thrush that nested in the middle of the forest, in the 30 to 50 acres that now finds the cookie-cutter subdivision that was the dirt road became a paved road, and the forest became a subdivision. Now the robins are nesting here rather than the wood thrushes. But during migration, they both migrate through the same areas. So even if you're in a small area, during migration, during the fall and spring migration, they're flying in similar flocks, and they're feeding on similar berry production. So if you diversify berry production, you can make small areas or small lots the least valuable for the migration of these birds that need bigger spaces. Now, landscaping is an art and a science. And you don't want to argue about, how it looks good, what doesn't look good. Aesthetics is very independent and very in your mind's eye what you think it is. But it is an art. Somebody spent all the time shaping these shrubs and planting them and manicuring the lawn nice and tight, making sure there's no weeds in there. That is the part that we've really done well with in the last few hundred years, is the art of landscaping. The science part is catching up, and that is monoculture is bad. In other words, science says, okay, you plant one shrub, and maybe there's a couple of enough white pines in there, maybe a spruce in there. What happens if you put all your shrubs in one species and then a disease hits that shrub? You're going to lose all of them. That's what people did when they put hemlocks in there as barriers to their yards, and then the Leodelgia came. So if you plant low plant diversity, you get low wildlife diversity. And science says plant a variety of things so that you hedge against diseases that cause a big outbreak. That happened in Connecticut, the Leodelgia, this parthenogenic, meaning only a female produces its own young of this insect that came in on a Japanese hemlock up from the mid-Atlantic states and then blew in, I think, on Storm Gloria hurricane. It started sucking all our juices out of our hemlocks, which is our most shade-tolerant tree found in the eastern part of the country. If you planted a monoculture of hedges, that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna have to treat all of those plants. Plant a variety of plants and you can hedge, no pun intended, against losing the whole hedge or the whole plantation. Every plant, from the blade of grass to the tallest tree, creates habitat. And this is one plant, one of my favorite plants, silky dogwood. It's one of the dogwoods found in Connecticut. And just to, there's all kinds of associations you could make with plants and animals. And this is one that I like to make. The trout hide under there because they don't want to get eaten. The wood ducks hide because they don't want to get taken by a peregrine falcon. Things like the yellow warbler, birds may nest in there because it's a thicket environment, so it's safe. The Queen Anne's lace gets fed upon by butterflies. Some of them lay their eggs on it, like that duet. The fleshy fruit that ripens in the fall gets eaten by migratory birds as they fly through, as well as our resident birds that stay here. Here's a variety of associations. You can do this for any plant. You create associations. They've evolved. They've co-evolved. And shades the water, keeps the oxygen levels high if it's cool. It keeps the bank from eroding. Now, this isn't how people thought, even as long as 20 years ago. When I first started in this profession, our state nursery was still growing autumn olive. And I had one conversation with him, and I showed him what was happening in the scientific literature, and he changed, and he started planting more silky dogwood, and he stopped the autumn olives. But why did they think like that? Well, we think about magical plants that create lots of things. Autumn olive creates 50 pounds of fruit per shrub. So, wow, it's a great investment, throw it out there. But they don't think about this, that it's not native to the continent and that it could take off. And scientists that were trying to stop erosion, soil conservationists planted this plant, Japanese knotweed. They thought it was great aggressive. Put it out there and it stops erosion. You can't kill it. Well, it starts growing out of our storm drains and it becomes a huge problem for us here because it didn't co-evolve with lots of animals and insects here. So what happens is not many things feed on it, not many diseases, so it outcompetes our natural vegetation. Cornell has finally started documenting what happens in these patches of Japanese knotweed versus natural patches. They found that there's less diversity, plant diversity in those areas. They also found that there's less foraging by frogs in those areas when they compared the two invaded versus non-invaded. So the science is starting to show the effects scientifically. Here, right in Burlington where I work, there's a patch on the outside of our property. This is 774 acres. There's a patch right near a waterway. And what's bad about it is it seeds. And the seeds will float downstream and then germinate, or a rhizome might break off. So what do? We make sure it doesn't go to seed. So you chop it down, make sure it doesn't go to seed as a first step. Here's a close-up of the seed. There's a study done in Massachusetts showed they have pretty good germination rates. Here's, if you ever tried to control this plant, it can go down 1.5 feet. Very dense rhizomes and aggressive plant. You have to either mow it down quite a bit, and then we advise a late season, a late summer application of Roundup to kill the roots so that it translocates. I know some people are against using herbicides, but in the case of knotweed, there's very few things other than not making it go to seed. You might be able to exhaust some of the productivity on the ground, but not letting go to seed is one step. But trying to kill it, you have to really use some kind of herbicide. There is a organic herbicide that's out there. I don't know the name of it, but you could look it up. There is an organic stem treatment that you could inject into the stem. I'm not aware of the exact chemical that it is, though. It is natural. Okay, the threats to biodiversity. Habitat loss and fragmentation is number one, but number two is invasive non-natives. And I never thought in my career, I went into wildlife because I love wildlife. That's why I went into the field. And my dendrology class, I really got into that, and in botany. And I never realized, and even, it's only come onto the radar the last 10 to 20 years about what invasive non-natives are really doing to our environment. And we're really starting to see it is the second biggest threat to our biodiversity. Now, of the 2,800 total plants found in Connecticut, I just want to put this in perspective. 1,800 are native, okay? So roughly 1,000 are non-native. But of the non-native plants, the ones that have been shown to be invasive are 96. That's for Connecticut. Now, you can go to other states and this will change the number. And we don't know with climate warms if that's going to change a little bit too. But to put in perspective, it's about 3.5% of the total species, about 10% of the non-natives are real aggressive, okay? That's what's been shown. Now, I just want to tell you that there are panels here in Connecticut that have to, you have to bring a plant up for a ban if it's being evaluated, and they evaluate it as scientifically as possible. But there's also a political part to it as well, and an economic part to it. So it's realistic, it's socio-political and biological. Why are native plants better than anything? Well, first of all, they're indigenous. They've evolved here, right? They came and they're adapted to the soil and the climate. They've co-evolved with those critters. There's a co-evolution there. Invasive non-natives, what do? Well, they were brought in by human intervention or human use of them, and they started spreading. Okay, they weren't well behaved. If you plant a Nugo pine, it's what we call well behaved. I'm not putting anthropomorphic value in that. I usually don't do that, but for illustration, it's not behaved. Well, a Nugo pine will not move around to your neighbor's yard. It'll stay right where you planted it. The problem with invasive non-natives is they displace. Anywhere a non-native plant is growing that wasn't planted by you is displacing some other native plant that would have evolved for that position in the community, in the plant community. And the degrading of the habitat. Sometimes it's very subtle, and sometimes it's very dramatic. Like purple loosestrife can be very dramatic when it takes over an area. Japanese knotweed can be very dramatic. Phragmites, when you look out in a swamp and say, boy, last year, 5 years ago, it didn't look that bad. Wow, look at it now. They start degrading gradually, and then before you know it, it's really dramatic. Now, an invasive plant is a limiting factor for something. It causes it to displace or take the position of some other plant, okay? And if you remove that limiting factor, whatever species that was supposed to grow there will start growing there. So the native species will increase. Once you remove that limiting factor, the biological diversity improves because some other plant that was supposed to be there can take that position now if you intervene. So the challenge for us as habitat managers is when do we intervene, which ones do we intervene with, and do we have the energy, money, time, and so forth to do it. That's the challenge. We know that we're not going to be able to do much about this invasion. This was a blight that came in on a Chinese chestnut tree and took down our giant of the forest. We tend to forget that. That was an invasive blight. It was not natural to this area, and it took down our... Now we hope that, and I planted 12 on my property of these resistant varieties, but Dr. Agnestakis at the experiment station and collaborating with other scientists are going to reintroduce a resistant variety, but it caused the demise of the giant of our forest. There's just a photo of it here in the northeast. And we don't even know the effect it had on wildlife. What did that nut really mean for our wildlife? Did we have more abundance of certain animals because of the nutrition of this nut? We don't know. But that was an indirect invasion where they brought in the Chinese chestnut's not invasive, it's the blight that was on it. Now what I'd like to do for you is, and believe me, I can only touch the tip of the iceberg, but here's Sessions Woods property that I manage. I manage wildlife management areas west of the river as a Western District biologist. And this property we're making into a demonstration site in the last 20 years. We're trying to show the public what they can do to manage habitat and create habitat for folks on small and large acreages. These are the invasives we've identified so far on the property, and I just want to share with you a couple of the challenges. I already shared with the Japanese knotweed and what we did to manage it, because as land trust folks, you may be able to take on projects of this scope, maybe you may not, but I'll make you aware of what we did on this particular property, and hopefully, maybe you can get some tips out of it. We did get a grant from the Natural Resource Conservation Service, WIP grant, for the first project, this black locust. Now, black locust is native to the South Appalachians mountains. It's not native up here. It was brought up because of the quality of the wood for fence posts and use. But we have a big patch. And we had this inventory by a forester. And by the way, that's where we planted resistant American chestnut over here. This first patch, we took care of it with a cordwood cutting. It's a little patch, about 2.5 acres. We just had a forester mark it, and we had a cordwood cutter go in and cut it, and they took it. The second patch was over 800 stems. I think it was 600 stems. Yeah, 600 stems of cordwood or large diameter trees. Here you can see them. The ones in orange are the ones that were marked for removal. There's a cherry, there's a birch. We didn't do a clear cut on it. We did a selective harvest of all the locusts, and we first had the inventory. To identify it, it's compound leaves. There's the native range. Okay. Here, it's the young growth has thorns. It grows like a legume pod. You can see here the size of it here. 24,000 seeds per pound. 7 to 15 pounds per 100 pounds of these pods. Okay, very prolific seeder, and they're going to throw seeds out. The other habit it has is it clones and it shoots out rhizomes. So what did we do? We inventoried it, marked it, and we had a whole tree harvester come in and harvest it, stack the cordwood on one end and put the saw logs on another. We educated the public about it while it was going on so that we could have some dialogue with the public so they knew what was going on. The stump was marked so we knew which ones to remove because we went back and we treated the stumps to prevent resprouting, so we had some absorption of herbicide in there, Brownline 3A. They also, for 4 years, we treated stumps, runners that developed throughout the area. And it got less and less runners as time went on. Here's some cordwood that was leaving. Here's saw logs that were brought to the DEP sawmill for processing. And if you want to see, we had 45 cords were sold for firewood. Here's the sawmill in Portland, creating boards. It's very hard wood. You can see the strain on this blade here. Lots of good uses for this wood, boat frames, decking for horse trailers, fence posts. I asked people that know about rotting wood, how long does wood last? And this one fellow told me 1 day longer than eternity. It is comparable to the pressure treated as far as longevity, but very aggressive. It's very hard wood, very, very hard. Here's some more of it stacked. And here's a beautiful bridge that was built by a scout, Eagle Scout in Nassahegan State Forest. Recently, I gave him the wood that I had stacked in the barn. He donated that. He did the project. There's some other wood in there that you have to get. But they planned it and executed the project. And that's a really nice contribution to the forest there and the trail, Texas Trail. We also manage, and I've been watching like a hawk, this yellow area here, right along 69. Over the years, even before I was the habitat manager for wildlife management areas, I was an urban biologist. I would always pull up seedlings that I saw as I drove along the road because in the fall you could see the Norway maples growing along the edges. And the Norways are very visible in the fall because they don't turn orange like the sugar maples. This is potentially invasive, and I say potentially because clinically it's what it is, but scientifically it's starting to catch up on what it really is. It's listed in our list as potentially invasive, but when you look at the landscape, it really does a lot of invading. Here's swoop 69. And here is a 3-inch diameter, 3.5-inch diameter Norway maple, and many, many more inside the woods. You can easily tell them apart here, which one is the Norway, okay? Which one is the Norway? And you can tell the Norway maple from the native vegetation very easily. You could also look at the bud. The bud has this this red purpley color. It bleeds this latex when you break the leaf off the stem. And the challenge for us here is, do we plant Norways or do we plant native sugar maples? And it's really our choice. But the battle is out there. Why? Because the Norway maple is readily available, and there's this theory that they're more hardy and whatever. But are we trading off color and tradition of having sugar maples? In the old days, when we were more utilitarian, I guarantee you couldn't convince a farmer or a homesteader that Norway maples are better, because when they went to tap them, they didn't taste nearly as good as a sugar maple. But we're past that utilitarian age of thinking of plants, of how do we utilize them. We think of plants only as ornamentals to create some kind of vista or look or shade. We don't think of it utilitarian-wise, but then we don't also think of it ecologically. What is the difference between here? There's a significant difference between these two plants, which ones you plant. They're both going to last over 100 years. So when you make your decision, you've made a 100+ year decision when you plant one of these two plants on your property. The seeds from the sugar maple, readily eaten and taken away by our wildlife. The little helicopter seeds from the Norway maple, I used to make Pinocchio noses out of this plant because it's got that little latex sticky stuff. I used to laugh at that. I still do it once in a while, but it's sticking up. But not many things eat those seeds as relative to the native sugar maple. So the sugar maple is more valuable for our wildlife. They co-evolve. This is just from the food habits literature of what eats those seeds. And Cornell did a study. They looked at underneath Norway maples what grew, and they found lower diversity there, species richness. They also found more Norway maples grew under sugar maples than the reverse. Okay, so they don't know why, but there's something going on. They haven't quite figured it out yet. But there's less Norway maples growing under sugar maples than vice versa, seedlings. Okay? And then there was another study in 2005 that also showed diversity and richness lower under the canopy of the Norway maples. This was one of the best uses of a Norway maple I ever saw. And it was a learning spot at a school, Station 9, 37 rings. Now, it took a lot of courage to cut a 37-year-old tree down, invasive Norway maple. But the parent tree of that tree, you need 3 adults to put their arms around it. It had been there for who knows how long, 150, 200 years. So the choices that we make have long-term ramifications. And all through this little floodplain here with this Norway maples growing, were all, and I wish I had taken a far-away shot, silver maples and red maples, all discontorted, growing around these Norway maples. And I already shared with you the Japanese knotweed. The only one I want to share with you now is this winged euonymus patch. And by the way, where are the seeds coming from for the Norway maples? They're blowing in from the suburban development here to the east, blowing in on the road. And where are the winged euonymus seeds? From plantations right up the road where subdivisions come in. So I'm constantly looking at our border areas for invading plants. It's an incredible source. The Norway maples are a little slower at marching into your woods, but they get there. We plant this one for the aesthetics. Everybody wants a burning bush. It's beautiful. They see it on the highways, and they think it's a gorgeous plant, but it is invading our understory. Now, this is also another potentially invasive non-native, because it's not listed. So it's not listed yet, but you'll find it growing in the wild, in the understory. You go to Fairfield County, there's older communities where estates, older, rich estates, where pretty much was planted prolifically. You'll find it in the surrounding woods. Bethel Land Trust, if you ever want to take a field trip, I noticed a lot of them there in the understory. Here's the seed, gets eaten by birds. Here's the wings on the corky bark. This is what I like to do with them. I hang them upside down, dry them out, and let them desiccate. You'll know I was around if I'm on the stage. On my property, you'll see that quite a bit. Anybody know this plant?
Blueberry.
Very good. We generally don't think of red when we think of blueberry. We think of how to make muffins in the morning with our blueberries that we pick. This is a native high-bush blueberry, and we don't take notice of that plant, even though it's very common in our forests and our edges and our dry and wet areas. We don't think of it. We don't think ecologically about this plant. We think only how can we use it? Use it for our garden, put a fence around it, but it's very valuable. Birds have to be beaten away from these plants. There's a reason for that, as well as the huckleberries. We don't think of planting these plants for ecological reasons. We only think of it as a utilitarian purpose, but they do get a nice red color. And there's varieties on the market now, native Vaccinium cornbosum, that is quite red, quite brightly red, and natural ones in the wild. Now, what I'd like to do for you is I'd like to just quickly go through a few native plants that maybe to stimulate your mind about what you can plant in springtime, what can you plant on your properties, whether it's small or large, and I hope that you can add diversity to your properties and make them native plants. The seasonal, spring, summer, winter, and fall, how those seasons change is so important for wildlife. And they all adapt to different feeding habits during those seasons. And if you could learn to predict the seasonal changes, what is a wild turkey eating in the spring? What is it eating in the fall? What is it eating in the winter? What is it eating in the early spring, late winter? What do the migratory birds feed on in the spring and in the fall? Seasonal foods. You ask, what is limiting? Is there food, seasonal food, limiting on my property? Is there limited cover? Am I chopping everything down and making it, plant a tree and put mulch around it? Or am I creating cover there as well? Multiple plants clustered? Can I dedicate space to wildlife? Can I take a portion of an area and say, I'm going to manage that for wildlife, for diversity, for food, cover, and space? And are there invasive non-natives that are going to start taking over my property, my area? So what you do is you make a little sketch of your area that you're going to manage, and I'm going to very simply give you a diagram here. You want to put little circles and big circles to designate trees versus shrubs versus canopy size. Identify what you have. And then the little red dots, you got to identify your invasives. Why? Because they're like little tumors ready to burst and take over the area. And you have to know where they are. If you're not going to manage them, at least find out where they are and monitor. Sometimes you don't have to do a lot, but sometimes you might have to. If you want to have a native meadow, you're going to have to manage those invasives. So start plotting them out. And you could add a few other things. You make a place where you're going to put an edge enhancement. But just make a general plan for your property, small area. This is a real busy slide. The only thing I want to say is carrying capacity is the average number of animals that live from season to season. You can't stockpile animals and let them live somewhere. You have to make the habitat. The only way you can increase the average number of animals that live from season to season is by improving the habitat. If I had a 5-gallon pail, you can only put 5 gallons in there. The only way you can get 6 gallons in a 5-gallon pail is to make the pail bigger. The only way you can improve the average number of animals, whatever you pick, is by improving the habitat. The lady once asked me if she could buy cardinals to stock in her yard. And I didn't chuckle because I get some pretty strange questions, just like Jason hears about mountain lions. I might hear about, how do I track these cardinals? Well, habitat determines what lives where, and the quality and the quantity of it is the dictator of the habitat. So where do you start? Locate your boundaries, make an inventory of the seasonal habitat components, the conditions and the wildlife that are there. Determine your limiting factors. Do I have spring food, summer food, winter cover, winter food, fall food, variety of migration food sources, persistent food sources. Those are going to be your limiting factors. And then create a timeline. And it may take several years to make some headway, but you need to create some kind of timeline. What you want to do is you want to plant what's naturally found in that area. There's a bluebird feeding on a winterberry berry. There's the good plant that I was showing you. That's my favorite winterberry, Ilex verticillata. Be careful about the cultivars. I made the mistake of buying these dwarf cultivars by accident just because they had a lot of berries. The female produces the berries. I was restoring an understory on my own land, and I bought some really nice red berries on these plants, and I picked them out of the patch at the nursery because they were all female and they were producing great berries. Come to find out, they stayed low. They were cultivar from the shore of Maine, and I made a mistake because the natural, look at how tall that gets. It gets above the deer browse, whereas these dwarfs can't get above the deer browse. So I'm stuck with these short plants that are going to constantly get hammered by the deer. So be careful about cultivars, even though they're native. You want to get as close as you can. But if you're doing a 7-Eleven landscape plantation or some kind of a commercial thing, and you need a short winterberry, yeah, that's fine in that spot. But in the natural environment, you want them native, or in the backyard or in a place that you want them the natural stuff. Here is chokeberry. Another persistent winter food, and because we're just getting out of winter, I'm showing you these winter persistent plants, but here I'm going to like to show you this little video I took at Nod Brook Wildlife Area. Oh, man, it keeps moving. Notice what's in the foreground. What was that bird? Robin. The bird that you just saw very quickly and briefly.
First one's a robin.
All right, well, we'll let this video finish. And this is a robin feeding on, actually those are crab apples. And luckily crab apples are not invasive. So if you plant them, they're not invasive. But this is a typical thing that you would see on winterberry. The robins. Now here we are in January and they're feeding on these winter persistent berries. The winter berries are winter persistent. The bird that charged in real briefly there, and we're not going to talk about that animal today, and that could be a subject of a whole nother lecture. Let's see, we'll get back and just show it real quick. Watch real carefully. Starling, huh? Okay, invasive non-native bird, which we won't talk about today, but it is competing for food, right? And nesting habits. They also compete for nesting habitat with our cabinet. Without getting off topic, another winter persistent. This plant gets persecuted every year. It's our natural sumacs. The red-berried sumac is not poisonous. The white-berried sumac is the itchy, bad one that you don't want in your, to be in areas that you walk in or touch. But these native ones are valuable. Birds eat them as a winter food. You see turkeys eating them, bluebirds, robins, flickers. They're widely used by our migration, fall and winter spring migration.
I have a stand of sumac and robins feed on it all winter long.
Excellent. Here's a patch I want to share with you. This plant is easily mistaken for sumac. Here's at Simsbury along the river. And you think that those are all the same plants, right? Well, close inspection, these here, overtowering, those are Elianthus, tree of heaven. These here are staghorn sumac, native. And this battle goes on all the time between native and non-native. If you don't, but here I'll give you a few tips on identifying it. Obviously, you want the native sumac. You don't want the invasive tree of heaven. Here in another wildlife management area, I just want to share with you, it was introduced in the 1700s, this plant in the United States. When it displaces our natural vegetation through a liliopathic chemical. In other words, it's been shown that there's substances within the plant that will suppress other plants around it. And it was, a phytotoxic compound that was proven in this journal of chemical ecology. This invasive plant that was brought in for the silkworm industry has exploded throughout the Northeast, started in Brooklyn, New York, and it's moving along our highways. And there's males and female clones. So if you have a female clone, immediately cut them so they don't produce a seed. The males can wait because it's basically vegetation, but they're not as critical to cut down or fertile because the seeds that come off of here are just a tremendous amount of seeds. And here's the Ailanthus. It looks like the sumac, but it doesn't turn red. It stays green, yellowish. And if you cut it, it smells terrible. Here's the little smiley leaf scar that it leaves, okay? It's a big leaf scar, actually. And this is what we did to that plant. We chopped it with a machete and we injected Garland 3A right in those stems to kill the clone, the ability for it to grow. With that missing, now we release these to grow, right? So we're releasing it from competition. And it takes a year or two for that to happen. Here's the sumac color. It's beautiful. The fall, it's one of the most brilliantly colored, underappreciated plant we have. It's beautiful, red, brilliant color. And there's the fuzzy stem on it, okay, differentiating it from the tree of heaven. And there's the sumac berries. And here's the smooth, I already showed you this one. It's a little lower, stays shorter, and it has a smooth, purplish, chalky white coating on the stem. Here is a yellow-rope warbler eating the berries or the cones. It's a modified cone off of the red cedar, another winter persistent. Cedar waxwings eat this, turkeys eat it, these yellow-rope warblers eat it. A lot of things eat these berries off of the female red cedar. A lot of people made the mistake and thought that the barberries were such magical plants. They'd stay nice and bright during the winter. They'd feed our birds, and that was a big mistake. The European barberry isn't quite as bad. It produces berries at the end of a stem, like grapes. That's the difference between the Japanese and the European. The European are like grapes at the end. The Japanese are internodal, 2s and 3s, internodal, not like a grape. So if you want to differentiate, here's what I would plant instead of that. Here in front of our building at Sessions Woods, during the fall migration, and by the way, I planted those, they were only about 2 feet tall when I planted these northern bayberries that were planted in the front there. And for 4 years, I didn't observe anything here. And then now this is 1992 that they were planted, I planted them. Pay close attention as zipping in and out of this bush. And that actually those are 3 bushes clustered together. We'll see a close-up of the yellow-rump warbler feeding on the berries. And every season since then, they come to eat the berries, and the female clone provides these berries. When you plant for wildlife, you're not going to get instant results like you do with the bird feeder. It's going to take time to observe. And if you don't observe, you'll walk right by this and never see it. I try to point it out to folks anytime I can because when you plant habitat, it's kind of like the idea of when you teach somebody to fish, they can fish for their lifetime versus you feed them once and then they don't know how to fish. This is the same concept. you plant things and you have a sustainable food source over time. And that's what animals have evolved. They don't have to depend on us putting food in the box. Northern bayberries were used for candle wax making. You need about a bushel to do anything with it. I tried that once. But not a very good project. But here's a close-up of the yellow rub. And here's right in front of the building right here. And I've hid under here and had these birds zip by my head, right eye level, when they're in peak flight, when they're coming in, both in the spring and in the fall. There aren't any, this spring there are none on the plant, so I'm not anticipating seeing any. But in the fall, they were there in big numbers, and I videotaped them. There's the European barberry. That was supposed to be a previous slide showing the pendulum grapes and the flowers. Oh, by the way, the purple variety was claimed not to be invasive, and I find it. That's on my land. I let this grow for another 2 more years till the researcher from UConn was going to come take a look at it. They actually did a study, and they determined what cultivars are not aggressive, and most of them are invasive. And they finally, science has proved that they've germinated them out. So if you want, you look up a study at UConn when they did a barberry germination study of all cultivars, and it's been proven that the majority of them are invasive, and very few are not invasive. Barberry was touted as a great turkey food. If you talk to a wildlife biologist 25 years ago, he would have said, plant barberry, winter food. Well, in '75 is when we reintroduced the turkeys to Connecticut, 22 birds. And I want to share with you I watched a car hit a turkey in front of me in April, early April, on Route 118. And I always want to look at the crop. Whenever I find a dead turkey, I'm always looking at they store their food at the base of their neck. I want to show you what I found in the crop of a wild turkey, I think it was 3 springs ago. Time flies. And I just want to share with you, you think that it would have been full of barberry because it's winter persistent, right? Well, here's what it had. Here's the crop. And of course, the bird is expired. But let me show you what was in here. I'm just going to show you close up. Here's a germinating acorn. Okay? That penny's just for size. These are germinating black cherry pits. Okay? So we found black cherries, dug them up, and they're eating the sprouts, with the seed attached. And this was perplexing to me. Take a close look at this. The majority of that crop had these fruiting bodies, and here's a close-up of one. Anybody take a wild guess? If you haven't seen my slide before, what is that structure? The majority of its crop was filled with that in early April. Some people think it's a pine cone, maybe a young pine cone. No. Some people might think it's a mulberry. No, because mulberries produce in June. Some people think, well, it might be a blackberry that's immature. No, they produce in June. This is April. The vines haven't even flowered yet, right? If you're a blackberry or raspberry. That is the spadix of the skunk cabbage. Now, skunk cabbage, you can shoot through the ground. It's homeothermic. It can produce its own heat and come through the ground, and now it's reproducing. That's the blossom of the... Now, these birds have evolved thousands of years of finding, you're at the end of winter, there's not a lot to eat. Well, this is one of their food sources. And if we pay attention to what nature is doing, right, you look at the food habits of something that doesn't migrate. This bird stays in Connecticut, makes its living all year round off of our land, within 4 square miles, usually. That is amazing what they can find to feed. So the lesson that I hope that you take from this is that plant diversity is very important. The animals will tell you that if you watch what's going on out there. But the more diverse your landscape, the more ability to feed our wildlife seasonally. And they also had some worms and a cutworm here, and a millipede and a worm right there. This was a fall one. I just want to show you a close-up in Avon. This one was hit by a car in Avon. And here's a hickory nut. Here's an insect. 6 different varieties from viburnums, and there were actually some barberry in that one. That's what it is. But 5 other berries. Here is a snail, and I found out very recently that birds eat snails for their egg laying. That's where they get their calcium, and I didn't realize where they were getting it. An entomologist pointed that out to me. And then you see a sprouting seed here, American beech bud. Just a diversity of things that it's eating. Okay, there's no invasive evergreen out there, so plant evergreens to your content as much as you want. Plant the cluster them. Replace those ones we've lost, those hemlock we've lost. Anytime you could cluster evergreens from spruces to pines, plant them as widely, and cedars as widely as you can, and keep planting them. They're very valuable winter cover. You take it for granted up here, but only 12% of the forest is evergreen. And we've lost some of the hemlock, so replacing evergreens is very valuable. The chipping sparrow nests in this one a lot. This is the Yukon dwarf variety. This was Sid Waxman. Dr. Waxman donated it to us, and it stays dwarf. It's a witch's broom, and it's a white pine native, kind of strobus, but it doesn't get large. It stays dwarf. It's a Yukon variety over there. There's a chipping sparrow hiding in the right now, when I was coming up, I noticed the service berries blooming, right? That's serviceberry is also known as shadbush. And check out right here. Watch it feeding its young in a serviceberry. Now, this ripens in June, Juneberry. By the end of June, they ripen up. I videotaped this with my little camera. This is right in front of my office, right in front of my window in my office. And it's just amazing how, you plant things and then you see the results. And it's more satisfying when you are able to see that the animals are utilizing this. If you're gone, not there anymore, those animals are still feeding on that. It's a returns on your investment over and over again. So plant for our wildlife. Here's a fledgling robin eating the same things. In the front of the Wilbur Young building, I was going to a meeting and I snapped that photo right in front of the building, serviceberry. There's a close-up of the berry. You get in trouble with common names, so keep the Amyloid canadensis in your mind. And you got it on that piece of paper, by the way. Here's the flower. Flowers when the migration of the shad occurs, right? Don't make the mistake that biologists made, back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Autumn olive, this magical 50 pounds per plant is bad news. And every profession has a learning curve on invasives. And you don't want to plant this. You want to plant the fruiting plants that I mentioned earlier. This is a bad plant, the autumn olive. It overtakes. There's 2 autumn olives, and here's a silky dogwood trying to survive. If you don't cut these out, that silky dogwood's never going to make it. Now, thankfully, this plant isn't invasive. What's this plant? You guys enjoyed watching this the last couple of days? What do you got? Forsythia, thankfully, does not move unless you give one to your neighbor through the roots. For whatever reason, there's nothing pollinating. It doesn't produce seeds, thankfully, because this is another Asiatic plant that could have taken off just like burning bush, but we lucked out on this one. This one hasn't become invasive. It only produces by its roots, right? Or when it touches the ground by its, jump, by, rooting itself. But it doesn't move by seeds. Now this is the Forsythia of the woods. Now what is this? Rice bush, okay. My kids laugh at me when I call it the Forsythia of the woods, and so does everybody else. It's very small. I just took this photo. We had some seeds in the fall. We had them contract grown, and then we planted them back on the land, so we had genetically superior plants there. As a land trust, you can do that. You can harvest your own berries. contract roll them out and do a sale with them, or donate them, or restore your own lands. You can also go and buy native plants. But that's just giving you ideas for projects if you want to do that. And anytime you can add grasses to your properties, add grasses. Very valuable as adding diversity. These are some of the native grasses. We're trying to do that on Center Street here at Tunsis, across from Carolyn Bloom's property, and she's helping us manage that property as well. The bunch grass, they're bunch grasses. They're not like that, the old, the forage grasses that are cloven. These tend to bunch and they provide an interesting habitat, more diverse little nooks and crannies. You don't always get exactly what you want when you create these meadows, but you start looking. And this, we camped on our field. I have a 5-acre meadow that I changed from a cornfield and an autumn olive infestation to goldenrod and native grasses. And while we're there, I kept hearing indigo bunting, calling. I got that photo of it. I don't have a great camera. But it nested near in the woods nearby in a little edge there, and then it fed on the seeds throughout my meadow. And, whatever your reason for creating that meadow, do it. Create a diverse native herbaceous meadow of native wildflowers and grasses. If you have an edge that is, if you have a steep slope that you keep mowing, stop mowing it and see what happens. You might find things like New York ironweed or Joe Pye weed growing there. You might find New England aster. But if you keep chopping it down and not letting it go to seed, you're never going to know what's there. And also plant in some of these plants if you can. This is something you may observe if you do that. This is Joe Pye weed, and I was going on Route 63 and I stopped on the side of the road and I watched this hummingbird sphinx moth feeding on Joe Pye weed, which I never thought was going to attract something like a sphinx moth. But animals surprise you. There's enough nectar there, and they're foraging on it. So plant a diversity of wildflowers in your patches. Try to mimic the natural environment, and you can observe lots of unique creatures like the sphinx moth. And once in a while, you get treated to something like this. This was a surprise. My wife and I, on a September day, we went to just at the Hammonasset Beach late in the afternoon. It was getting dark, see the sun was very low. We're just going to read a book, watch the sun go down. And it was real chilly. There's a brisk wind coming off the ocean. And as we came back to our vehicle, and I had my little camera, and I couldn't believe the number of monarchs that were flying by. Joanne, look at all these monarchs. And then on the windless side of these evergreens, right along the main stretch, when you go into Hammonasset, were these clusters of monarchs. And I thought you only see that in National Geographic. And, you don't see it here in Connecticut. But there it was. And the only way we're going to get that to recur and, the opportunity to see this beautiful phenomenon is you've got to plant things, right? Now, everybody okay with this slide? I don't want to make anybody nervous. We don't think of reproduction of the animal. We only think of the nectar. Okay, so we only think about planting flowers for the nectar. But science tells us that without the larval food, without the thing to lay its egg on, the plant to lay its egg on, there's not going to be a butterfly. Nectar only is like eating a sugary meal, right? Okay, the spice bush butterfly lays its egg on spice bush. Well, the monarch, and there's actually a story behind it, but I got going way over time, so I can't really. I tried to get my teenage boys to help me identify some the butterflies on our property, and when I mentioned the word, they said, no way. I always got them ripping out invasives and doing physical work, maybe fishing in the river, but that day, I never saw them run so fast in my life after they got into it. Well, one of them saw this weird butterfly flying through the air and said, there's something wrong with that. And they followed it, and sure enough, it was the breeding monarchs. And the reason these two butterflies are breeding in that meadow is we have lots of milkweed that we planted. And that's something we're doing on Center Street. We planted the 3 varieties there. This is the native Asclepias syriaca. This one is the one that you see more commonly. it produces, the butterfly lays its egg on. There's the chrysalis. But remember that not only is it a larval food, but I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to smell the fragrance of these plants, but here's a tiger swallowtail. It's not going to lay its egg on it, but it's still going to feed on the nectar. Okay, so here it is. You get lots of skippers and different butterflies that will feed on the nectar of this plant, not necessarily lay its egg, but it is important as the larval food. There's 3 native monarch larval foods, and you have them listed on the handout I gave you, but it's orange butterfly weed, common milkweed, and then red milkweed. And you get the scientific names: Asclepias tuberosa, Asclepias syriaca, and Asclepias incarnata. Those are the 3 that you want to plant on your properties. Here's the, by the way, the tiger swallowtail lays its eggs on the cherries. Okay, so not very dramatic plant. People take it for granted. In the old days, they were widely respected because of the berries. People made all kinds of jams and black cherry brandy and the like. Today, it's taken for granted, but it's a very important larval food. Here's the orange butterfly weed, Asclepias tuberosa. And I could get into another story, but I'm not. This is another little funny one, but here's 13 caterpillars that were born off of this Asclepias tuberosa that I was taking care of. And of course, anytime you add tubular flowers, the native tubular flowers, not a sugary, milky liquid put in a container. These are natural foods, and it can be a limiting factor in your area. Why does your neighbor have hummingbirds? Is it because he's got a hummingbird feeder up, or is it because they planted a variety of tubular flowers? Plant the native tubular flowers. Things like the jewelweed and the cardinal. These are the 2 jewelweeds, the yellow and the orange. And then there's the cardinal flower. Oh, that wasn't supposed to be in there. Action items. We're gonna finish. Observe nature. Observe nature. Learn to predict that seasonal plant-animal interaction, how animals and plants interact. Inventory the area that you're managing, because you're all habitat managers. List the limiting factors: the spring food, summer, fall, winter, nectar, larval food for hummingbird, and then nectar for hummingbird. Diversify your plantings. Do not plant monoculture. Don't plant things in monoculture. If you have a street project and a new subdivision going in, have 8 or 10 different kinds of trees planted there, not sycamore maple because it's cheap, found at the local nursery. Plant variety, so don't, like New Haven, Elm City, lost all their elms because of the elm bark disease, right, that came out of lumber from Europe. This little beetle carried the disease. They had to clear out all their elms, even though they're so beautiful. They were monocultures. Increase native plants in your area. Don't plant invasive non-natives. There's 96 of them, okay? And improve the seasonal food and improve the seasonal cover of the area that you're managing. And I'd like you to avoid two things. One is this thing called paralysis by analysis. That's where, gee, this native plant thing is so challenging. I don't know what to buy, what plants to get. Start small. Make an attack of a specific invasive to get rid of it or to manage it, and then a replacement. But make a strategy and go forward with a strategy, and don't overanalyze it. Take some of the things that we talked about and implement them. And then there's this other thing called extinction by instinct that I find that habitat managers get into, or landscape folks. Is that there's a sale down at the local nursery, you borrow your neighbor's truck, you go there and you buy this green stuff and then you plant it. You didn't consult the list, okay, this list. So it's what I call extinction by instinct. You had good instinct, but you had bad execution because you didn't consult this list. So if you take 2 of these pitfalls, avoid them, take some of the things we talked about today, I hope you can create a better habitat. Okay. Yes, questions?
I have avoided planting some of the plants with weeds, and I'm deer, especially when you've got trees coming by.
Yeah, everybody hear the question? I'm concerned about planting berries because the deer and the bears might come into the yard.
Well, they will.
Yeah, there's 500 bears, there's 500 bears in Connecticut, and all the invasives create berries as well. So all the invasive plants that are on the list create berries. So if you're gonna pick plants to plant native ones, you're gonna come after the invasives or the natives. Do you want to create biodiversity is the question versus a sterile yard that, you know, chemicals and, you know, no mosquitoes, no ticks, no, that's the kind of yard versus diverse yard. But the bears, I would say, creating a diverse planting in your, on a small scale, will it attract black bears? Your garbage probably would do it a lot faster. Jason would probably answer that, but I don't want to skirt the question. The question is basically, I wouldn't avoid creating a biodiverse habitat with berries, but because of bears. Bears are in the northwest corner. They're becoming an issue more for people that don't store their foods correctly or their garbage and the increasing population. And Jason can talk to you guys about that. So at some point we may manage the bear population for that. But I wouldn't say that creating a diverse, ecosystem-friendly habitat by planting of diverse numbers of berries are going to put you in trouble with bears. The deer will eat everything. And also that's another solution there is take up organic deer harvesting, organic meat harvesting by harvesting a few deer, and there'll be less eating of your shrubs, or put a big fence around your yard.
Does Connecticut have any plans to protect our beautiful stands of ash trees in Connecticut? Because my son lives in northern Minnesota, and the ash borer out there is just completely wiping them out.
Okay, everybody here, I didn't hear the first part. You're concerned about it?
Yes.
Okay.
What's Connecticut?
American ash is one of our most beautiful trees. I mean, they're very beautiful. They make fats out of them. They're, females produce the seeds of the ashes, so there's males and females. Great lumber tree, beautiful aesthetic tree, good wildlife tree. The introduction of the elm ash borer, or the emerald ash borer that's going to be coming in, we're watching for it. That's another invasive that we're having trouble with. But there's already an existing disease called Yellow's disease that has been around for a few decades. The experiment station in New Haven is studying it. They've been in decline over the last 2 decades. I hope they find a solution for that blight, because they haven't even come close to finding a solution for that blight. If this emerald ash borer comes in, that's just going to be the death knell for a lot of them. It's sad. And it seems like everything with American elm took the hit, American ash is good. So I'm sensitive to it, you know, as a native American man, yeah.
I have a question about whether a crusade against certain invasives is worth it. I can drive up my street and I can see the autumn olive and the big rose thing there, multiflora rose and the barberry. And I think, and the anonymous, and I see those and they drive me nuts. And I'm thinking, let's say you had like a neighborhood watch group and people uprooted them all. Is it worth it? You know, are you putting an enormous amount of effort into a losing battle?
Okay. Everybody hear that? Do I have to repeat that? Like, you know, that's kind of like, it's not paralysis by analysis, it's extinction by instinct. You're just finding the exotic, the non-native, you want to rip it out. Doesn't matter what you want. You know, you're overzealous. Mm-hmm. And ecologists live in a world of wounds. We look out there, we see all these invasives, and we have to pick your battles. If you want to create a meadow, that's simple. Not simple, less challenging, because if you mow that meadow once a year, it stays in herbaceous condition. So maybe your target is herbaceous meadows, where you take out the invasives and you mow it once a year. So now you can't let any woody plant grow in there if you mow it once a year, once you've killed your invasives.
Kill your projector.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that might be a target, you know. So pick and choose your challenges. Another one, it might...
It's shining on you.
Oh, okay. I don't see it, I'm sorry.
No, but I mean, when you're standing there,
Yeah.
you're on a position.
We had we have these kinds of debates also internally amongst biologists, because if you want to create thick cover, sometimes you have to change your methodology of how you manage. You might have to leave some of the density there. So you have to pick your battles. I'll give you an example. At Sessions Woods, we picked our battles. The trees are canopy producers, right? There's 600 stems producing this mass amount of shade and basically changing that 18-acre area. So we decided we want those out. And we made a product out of it. Plus, we had a grant from NRCS. The Norway maples is watch and cut as you see and pull as you see. The Japanese knotweed is a small patch. If we don't take care of it right now, it's going to expand and get bigger and go into our marsh. So you have to pick your battles. As a private landowner, depending on the scope of your project, you may want to kill all the vines, the bittersweet vines in your trees, because that's a no-brainer. Once you stop them from seeding, I've cut down 35-year-old vines, this big. As a matter of fact, the flyer has that. I sent that. That's from my property. We cleared about 12 acres of tree top Asiatic bittersweet over 5 years, and we've made headway on that. That's my own personal project. So we pick your battles. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't go crazy hitting every plant, but target what you think you have the time, energy, and money to do. Is that an okay answer? Or did I not answer?
Yeah, you answered half of it.
Okay, well, what was the other half?
Basically, I mean, this fair number of people are fairly conscientious. And if I ran around and drove my neighbors crazy and handed them pictures of, say, autumn olive, it said, if you got this, you really may want to think of getting rid of it. Here's how you do it, although I'm not sure what the answer to that is. But if the neighborhood down the road isn't doing it, am I just putting a lot of effort into nothing?
Okay, we have 3 million acres in Connecticut.
Yeah.
88% is privately owned, from the last statistics I
Right.
heard. If you take your area and you manage it, that is not part of that 87% that's not being managed. Whatever you manage or choose to manage for that time period, you are making a difference. Now, the other thing it does is it causes awareness. Mile a minute, I didn't even show a slide of it, but that's in the state. Only 14 towns have it. But while you're looking for these other invasives, you may find the mile a minute vine and prevent it and spread. I found Japanese stiltgrass at Sessions by looking for the other invasives, which is new to our area. We go to Fairfield County, and it's everywhere. And then also educating folks to understand what cost we pay to plant non-native invasives. By being aware of it, you may less likely be willing to say, I want to see orange, I want to see that bright red color. I don't care what these ecologist guys are saying. I want to plant that burning bush. Maybe by showing them the effects, making them become aware of it, they may not want to plant the burning bush.
Okay.
Did I finish that?
Yeah,
Okay, Gordy?
yeah, thanks.
Yes.
You're talking about those bittersweet vines, and you talk to people about, I was thinking if you have a vine that big and you cut it, you got to do some good. But everybody says, well, if you cut it and don't paint it, you're just encouraging it to grow again.
Yeah.
But if you, if you kill that big plant, you've got to be doing some good besides.
Yeah, did everybody hear his question? Cutting a large vine like bittersweet, do you have to then paint it to kill the roots or some other strategy? Well, you can go into a whole lesson on strategies for every plant. And for bittersweet, since you asked, it's best to cut it just before ripening, which is midsummer. Before that seed ripens, when it's put all its energy into its canopy. If you can do this. Now, if you manage hundreds of acres, you may not be able to target just the end of the summer. You're going to have to start now and go through the whole summer because you have a lot of area. But if you can do that, if you could cut that vine midsummer and then paint the stem with Roundup, you can prevent the resprouting of it, and you've killed all of that mass up into the tree. So
Is there a lot of damage? Because I've experimented with somewhere, they're easy to find in the winter.
Yeah.
The vines and stuff. And I've cut them and then I've gone back to see if there's been a lot of regrowth, and there's not a lot.
Okay, well, what town, this is around here?
Farmington.
Okay, well, Farmington has lots of deer, and the deer will, you think that you may not have an issue there, but the deer are browsing the stems. But if you live in an area with few deer like up here, fewer than down in your neck of the woods, when you cut that stem, you send signals, hormone signals, and they're gonna sprout like crazy all around. That wherever the root mass is, the orange roots, wherever you follow, they're gonna shoot new runners, new stems. So you're best to paint the stems.
Yeah.
You are. And burning won't kill the roots either. That really is a treatment, like brush begon or which is trichophyra, painted on the stem late summer is the best. And I've made that mistake on my own land where I used to cut them anytime I find them. And unless you could rip them out, and even after you rip them out, they still get a few, you really should treat. And wait till that midsummer if you can. Because that, you kill, the thing is, put all this energy from the roots into the fruit production, you cut it, now it dies on the vine, and then you paint that stem. And I find that to be the best strategy.
Okay,
Yes.
just one more question.
What's going to happen to the Farmington River?
Well, all the river systems are conduits, you know, there's lots of migration going on, the seeds are going up and down those rivers. It's a challenge, and I know the Farmington, matter of fact, there was a research project done, right, where they, Betsy Corrigan did a survey, which is very interesting what she found. It's challenging, and you're going to find more, you know, the top, you could probably list the top 12 that she found is going to be on these invasive lists. And unless people take it up and start managing it, if somebody owns that land that those trees you found on, like the Norway maples. So,
But I'm talking about that
Diddy mow.
it's not,
oh, that's, okay, that's just another invasive that just.
What's
came in.
gonna happen?
Did them all?
yeah.
I don't know, guys. That's why this paralysis by analysis, you get paralyzed when you start. But you know, try to manage what you can. What I'm saying, prevention is the key to all of this. You know, if we can go back in time and say, you know, keep out all these invasives and start fresh, we would do it. But we let that out. It's what's next is what we hope that people will avoid. That ecologists, landscape ecologists, landscapers, landscape designers, when they make that plan, you know, 20 of these, 30 of these, and the budget's over here, those guys are like the prescription, the doctor making the prescription. If they don't put those into the plantations, we may not get that spread. Now, the ones that are already here are already doing it, but it's hopefully will prevent the future spread of future invaders by making people aware. And then we manage what we can. Manage what's on your land that's doable now and make a difference.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Peter.